Hi, and welcome to another Venture and Capital interview series. Today, I'm joined by the founder and general partner of Empress Capital, Mr. Yash Varma. Welcome, Yash.
Thanks, Steve. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Mate, now, obviously, you've got a couple different hats that you've sort of worn in your career before starting Empress Capital. So what I want to start off with is your journey as a founder, as a founder in sort of building a technology business. Can you give us some insights into that?
Yeah, no, that's great. So look, why don't I start at the beginning? Was born in India,
Yep.
grew up in Canberra, so you can't hold that against me. But grew up in Canberra, and look, I went to university in Sydney, studied IT and business on a scholarship there, and look, soon after that, ended up getting married, moving to London, and it was in London that I started my honeymoon off, and it was there I started my first business, and that was a software development company called Sparks. And look, I had that. We had offices in London, Scotland, with clients all over the world, and so we had companies like Deutsche Bank, Philips, Lloyd's, and I had that business for about 20 years, and we developed enterprise software. We had, like I say, a small number of large clients, but hundreds and thousands of corporate users using our software. And the big thing about that was,
Out of curiosity, when did you launch that?
So that was in 97. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And the big thing about that was the internet was taking off. We leveraged a lot of those technologies, and we could really see, the power of software, and particularly SaaS software. And that's a lot of what we developed, scalable software solutions. So look, I had that business for about 20 years. We had, offices both in Australia and the UK, and clients all over the world. And I love that business. It was really focused on values, as well as, the technology that we're doing. We had a great small team that could really deliver a lot of value to our clients. So look, I exited that business about 5 years ago, and I've been living between Australia, Switzerland, and London. And so it's been a strange journey, but also really exciting. Met some great people along the way. And yeah.
From a timing perspective, that's pretty impressive. So I went to the UK the first time in 2014, and then what I sort of learned was that things that typically happen in the UK seem to happen in Australia somewhere between a 6 to 18 month window afterwards. So when I went there in 2014, I remember going to level 39 and just being absolutely impressed about what they built there. And then, of course, then following that, that's where sort of the inspiration ideas for like Stone and Chalk and so forth come out of. And for you, how did you find like that period for yourself going through an exit? Because obviously that's one of the most exciting periods for a founder. But after 20 years, that's a long time welded to your business. How did you find that journey for yourself?
Oh yeah, look, I think look, I loved what I was doing. So there's a sort of, you're torn between whether that's the right thing to do. And there were circumstances that meant, for my business partner, which is one of the big drivers as to why the exit felt like the right point in time. So look, it felt like the right time. I think after a while as well, I'm really big on change, and I think that the time had come in terms of doing that. But it was exciting, and I think I'm really proud of what we achieved during that time, and some great clients, but equally some great solutions that are still in place today for a lot of our clients.
Yeah, and then so following 2017, you sort of sold the business, and then what sort of happened after that?
Yeah, look, so I was living overseas, living in Switzerland, and then we came back to Australia. My wife and I, and I've got 3 kids, and we came back here. And it was when I came back here, I've always been really passionate about personal development. So I've, worked with people like Tony Robbins and Brendan Burchard. And so, look, I saw the challenge of running a business, and then combining that with your family life, and then equally with your health. And so I decided to start a high performance coaching business. Was really targeted at founders and their teams to really get them a balance between 3 things. And that's really their productivity and their work life, and how they can really perform better there, but equally around their purpose and around why they do what they do, and then aligning that with your health. And so, how do we make sure we perform on all 3 of those angles? And for me, having that business as well, I've seen the massive impact it has on founders and teams to be able to sort of, I guess, deal with those challenges, but also keep going. And that's what sort of led me to, all the way along. I've been angel investing and equally, in early stage private and public companies. And so we're early investors in, companies like Tesla and Moderna. And, I love all the exponential technologies, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But so it got me thinking, why are we just putting money into businesses and not really looking at how we can support the founders? And so I really wanted to sort of bring that high performance coaching culture and mindset into the companies that we support. And so if we fast forward a little bit further on, went through a program run out of Silicon Valley by the Founders Institute called VC Labs. There's a couple of thousand of people that applied to that. And essentially that allowed me to really work with a lot of VCs globally, some of the leading new VCs in the world, and really immerse myself in that world. And so the output of that was to launch Empress Capital. And, our first fund is focused on early stage Australian and New Zealand AI companies.
Fantastic. Now I'm going to delve deeper into the AI aspect shortly and what the funds focus on. I just want to go back to this sort of peak performance area. What is, obviously you had your own journey as a founder. I know you've come across many founders. We deal with founders every day, and as founders, I suppose we've got interesting personalities in that, someone call them potentially, you could have them as defaults or I don't know, but there's a special kind of person that actually wants to build a business, and there's a special kind of resilience that's required for that. What have been some of your best lessons? Because, there really is, it's very hard to get work-life balance, as a founder. I find very few people that have been able to do that. However, obviously we do place importance on our own health because we need it for our mental energy. We need it for the challenges that we're solving. We need it for the fires we're putting out or for the ambitions that we have or whatever it may be. And then likewise, when we go home at night, we're playing dad, we're playing husband, we're playing, And so what have been some of the key insights you sort of found in some of the founders you've worked with who have been able to, I suppose, successfully build businesses, manage their health, and also family as well?
Yeah, look, I think, so for me, the number one thing I always talk about is energy. And I always feel like the person or the teams with the most energy are the ones that win. So you don't always have to be the smartest person, but if you have that grit, sort of mental and physical focus, and so often what I find is if you can keep going, and that's what the challenge is. There's never a straight path, and so that sort of, and there's a lot of research around this as well, but that grittiness, so that determination to keep going. And I think that comes from a couple of aspects. One is the physical aspect of having the energy to do that, but equally around that mental focus and desire. And that's where I sort of talk a little bit around purpose and understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And when we're building products, it's more than the functional products. And so if you can align, why you're doing what you're doing, it's far stronger and far greater. And we see that with a lot of the companies that have been really successful as well, around that purpose in what they're doing keeps them going. And, there's a financial aspect sure to what organizations and people work for. But if we can align those things, I think people have that energy to keep going when it gets tough.
Makes sense. And okay, so let's move into the AI part, because this is obviously, I find this interesting as an area. Is there any, and obviously AI covers pretty much every sector at the moment. What is the specific sectors you're focused on from a fund perspective?
Yeah, well, look, let's if we can touch on why AI as well, from our
actually,
point
that's a
of
great
view.
point. Yeah,
and so look, I talked about my first business was in '97. I saw the impact that the internet was having in what we were doing, and if we sort of fast forward 20 years from there, we've seen how dramatically every industry has changed with use of the internet, and so there's new ways and new business processes in almost every area of our lives. And so look, we see AI as being probably equally, if not greater, having greater significance than the internet on where we're going in terms of technology. And we're still at a very early stage within there. So we see, and a lot of our research is, showing that growing at, over 40% a year, annualized for the next 8 to 10 years. And so that's why we sort of feel like now is the time for investing in AI. So we're covering a few sectors, but we're also open, across the board, because we see there's really, great solutions there. So we're kicking our fund off with some solutions that are in the prop tech space, that are in the sort of ag tech, and equally around the sort of security space. But we're seeing things across the board right now in terms of health, in terms of education. Every day I'm amazed by what we're seeing. And, it really does remind me of, early 2000s, a lot of negativity. There's been this sort of, .com boom and bust, and everyone's very negative about things. But, what comes through that is great companies. And so that's why, so we're focusing on a few sectors, but equally we're open to kind of many other, areas in terms of, not necessarily sector specific.
So let's look at the fundamental thesis behind AI, because ultimately it sort of has two parts, right? It has what it can actually deliver to a customer, number one, as far as, improved outcomes or whatever it may be, or whoever the end customer is, the product or whatever. And I suppose the second part is the increase of productivity of individual like how, I suppose, how do you assess what this looks like sort of 5 years from now? Because I think when I'm sort of thinking about AI and the role plays, and I think I think about my business, and I think about how other businesses are using AI, ultimately it's effectively allowing companies to increase the output of their individual team members. Likewise, potentially, eliminating some inefficient roles or low value roles, or not for the wrong word, but, roles which, can sometimes be difficult to fill, but, can be replaced by AI. And then the second part is it can provide almost a more sort of tailored experience. What's your perspective, and what's your thesis behind I suppose the companies, that you're going to be investing into?
Yeah, look, so I think there's a lot of great points that you raised, but I think there's a number of things that how AI is going to be used. And, there's this big talk that all our jobs are going to go and all of these sorts of things. Now, I see even right now, what we're going to have is AI is augmenting what we do. So, we have our phones that can help us do things. We're seeing this, in lots of really interesting ways. So for example, there's people are developing software. There's, pair programming where people are coding, and then AI is, kind of working alongside people. And so, we're seeing this with radiologists where they're able to sort of look at scans and double check. So, have an AI kind of overlook at what's happening. And so what the net result of this is the productivity is growing, across all sorts of areas. We've got one company we're investing in right now, which is using, computer vision and biologists and drones to be able to plant trees. Now, the net result of that is they can, when we talk about efficiency, through use of this technology in their sort of patented pods they have, they can plant up to 40,000 trees a day. And so we're seeing the scalability and the sort of, ability to just augment what we do and become more efficient, just exponentially. And, this isn't one sector. That's what's exciting about it. And I think when we're looking at some of the models, the baseline models, things like GPT-3, you're starting to see natural language processing. There were some things today that were around, using chat to be able to kind of write stories, or to be able to, it's just, to me, every day,
And Dahlia as well for the creation of pictures. Like, it's fascinating. Like I use GPT-3 because sometimes, it's coming out with sort of creative can take hours to come up with it. So it's nice just to plug something in. You may dislike 8 out of 10 that come back, but the 1 or 2 you're like, fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this augmentation, and, I think the question is, before we thought about this, is going to be sort of the lowest, the sort of repetitive things, but, with something like DALL-E, where you're able to generate images and videos that, we're seeing some tools around video generation. So actually there's a lot of creative, jobs that you can be, that can be, I wouldn't say taken over, but you can get assistance with that. And that might come into design. It might come into architecture. And, leading into that, we also have another investment that's all in that sort of space as well, which is around generative design. And so, I can't quite announce what we're investing in yet. We're in the sort of final stages of that. But essentially, we're seeing solutions where buildings are able to be designed, and not just designed, but designed within planning permissions. And so it's quite sophisticated what that means. And so, it means that one of the bottlenecks we have in the building industry, for example, is always around DA approvals. And so, using this kind of technology, we can solve some really, really interesting problems in terms of speeding up that process, being more accurate, helping governments, helping, approval agencies to do things just so much better.
See, the part of thing I love about this is obviously it means that the rate of business, just moves a lot faster. And then also along with that becomes the growth potential. Now, if you go back a few years, one of the challenges for AI was just simply the cost of implementation, the cost of execution, the cost of training, etc. But it's well shown from sort of ARK Invest how much that has come down over the last few years, and will continue coming down to the point where every business should have an AI strategy, as part of it. And I find, I look at that, and to me, the future of business becomes exciting because once again, going back to that, productivity output becomes a lot greater than what we could have sort of foreseen sort of 5 years ago.
Yeah, look, 100%. I think this is why we feel now is the right time as well. So there's a sort of, I guess, certain headwinds. So one is around computing power has increased so much. If we look at that, and we look at storage in terms of cloud. So I just
services like Amazon, Google, Microsoft's Azure, it just makes it so much easier.
So one of the big costs, previously and even now is around training. So training models, and so one of the big things that sort of happened is so if we look at GPT-3 as the example, I think that in 2015 the cost to train and get that up and running with the number of parameters and the way that works was, I think it was somewhere around $700-800 million. And if we fast forward 5 years later, that I think that's $4 million to sort of train. And if we fast forward, maybe go to 2030, that cost will come down to maybe $500. And so what that means is the things that we previously wouldn't think about doing because it was cost prohibitive are going to become more and more feasible. I kind of relate that to the Human Genome Project, where that was $1 billion to do that. And now the costs of that are reasonably trivial, or will keep coming down. And so we're not that far away. It might seem like that. But that's a great thing about exponential technologies is, it's doubling, and, what starts off as, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 starts to become quite interesting. And so we really want to ride on the tailwinds of that and the costs as well of the hardware coming down. So that's also another thing that's why we feel now is the right time. Brilliant.
And do you want to give, like, as far as from a fund perspective, do you want to give any sort of details of, how you sort of structure the fund and sort of what the sort of expectation for investors looking to come into the fund would be?
Yeah, look, and so what we've done is we're raising a $20 million fund, and what we've modeled out, we've looked at the AI industry and modeled out what we see based, off data that we have from Crunchbase and other things around failure rates within the AI industry. And so we believe there's a massive growth path in investing in these companies. So we believe, our mid returns will sort of be around the 39% IRR, which we sort of, if it net on the fund is around about 5x. Look, at the lower end, we think 2 to 3, and if we hit the ball out of the park, we think we can really achieve some really high growth. So that's sort of 10x. And I know that sounds like very high returns, but we have a plan here around how we deploy that capital, and equally as the companies are scaling through this period, we think is a really exciting time to be in this space.
And you mentioned you're targeting companies coming out of Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, look, so within the fund as well, we'll apply for a early stage venture capital limited partnership, which means that there's certain. So what the benefit to our investors is that when we are certified with that, so that's with the ATO and with Oz Industry, the returns from our fund become tax free for our investors. So one of the key stipulations in there is that majority of our investments are within Australia. And so hence we're focusing on that. We think there's some great benefits to our investors. There is still a portion, there's probably 20 odd percent that we still can invest in overseas, and we'll look to do that. But we believe Australia is a great test bed to grow from. And we've seen that, with, many other companies to grow from here and build the right partnerships.
And for investors, how can they get sort of more information on the fund?
Well, look, besides being on Crisp, I'm more than happy to talk to people, but we also have our website. We've got a very detailed investor memorandum around all the details around the fund. And yeah, look, we're excited to be partnering with Wholesale Investor around that, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this more
Certainly
in
will
the coming
be.
months.
Certainly, I said I'm obviously a big fan of this area. I've obviously done talks in regards to this,
Yep.
and I said that exponential opportunity I feel really sits in that sort of in the role in which AI can play inside businesses. The final question I have for you, like when you're thinking about the companies you're investing into, you're thinking about this space, I always like to ask people, how do you see things 5 years out from now? What do you see from a business perspective, productivity perspective? What is going to change, whether it be in agri-tech, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be just in the different areas that are of interest to you? What do you see the next 5 years looks like?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and you can't hold me to it, but look, I think we're just augmenting every aspect of our life, and so I feel for those that want to jump on board with that, we're gonna probably have two streams, right? If you embrace this technology and you understand how you can use the data that you have, or I feel like there's endless sorts of ways of redefining the business that you have. And so I gave you the example of that there's new industries that will be formed, and I think that AI is going to provide a big backbone for that to be able to do. So we're going to be able to do things that we could never do. I talked about the company around planting trees, but equally, if you look at what's happening in that sector, it means that there's carbon credits, and there's there's things there that you can start to actually deploy these technologies. And so if we look at energy and we look at health, I really feel the use of data around our sensors and data are really what's going to sort of really also enhance every aspect of our life, ranging from driving to our health.
Agreed.
To IoT. And so I can just see there's a real ecosystem of companies now looking to develop solutions in there. So I feel like we're really going to live very differently even within 5 years. But
it's like the ultimate personalized experience, personalized healthcare, personalized ads, personalized, like everything is personalized.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like I'm big on Whoop. So I love.
Me too.
We're part of the same cult. So what I that's a really great example of understanding yourself. Equally with where you fit into the cohort of whatever, if that's what interests you, but equally what behaviors impact your health. And I think that's super powerful for people. Yeah. And I see that every day, and I use that within the coaching that I do as well, to see I can see the impact that physical things that I do, meditation, or whether it be saunas and all these things, how you can turn the dial. And that becomes super powerful when you apply that to our business, our lives, our relationships. Even I think it's to me it's exciting. I think there are some things that we need to be wary of in terms of how how data's that. We're seeing the data privacy and how we give access to our data. So I think there's a really great solution around the corner as well for those sorts of problems as well, for people to be able to control their data better and either monetize that or not, or just have that control as well. So I think
it's a beautiful thing about innovation. Every problem that gets created out of new innovation gets solved. It's someone else is waiting to then solve that problem as a next step. And that's what I love about this entire space. It is just filled with people that, once one problem gets solved, then you've got the next innovators coming through, solving the next layer of challenges that come with any new type of innovation or technology.
Exactly, and I do have a positive view of all of this, and I think if we highlight some of the things that are going to be here, there are biases in data, and all these things are solvable, and I think that's what's exciting as well, if we can really think about it and go deep. And that's why we want to support founders to be able to solve these problems, because that's where the opportunity is to also move humanity forward. And I think that's a big part of what we're doing. We believe there'll be great investment, but there are also great things that we can be doing for the greater world as well, whilst commercially doing well out of that.
Well, Yash, really appreciate our time together. I said, me personally as well, looking forward to working with you on sort of promoting the fund and get basically collaborating and engaging more investors with what you're doing. And obviously you're going to be featuring at Emergence as well, which is also exciting from our side. I said, it's my favorite thing that I do each year, our flagship event. Once again, thank you so much for your time. Obviously there's details on Chris in regards to the Empress Capital Fund. And then likewise, you've got your own website set up where people can get sort of more information. The other part I'm excited about is introducing maybe some of the philosophies around that sort of, that personal development, that sort of excellence aspect, and that maybe for some of the founders we work with as well.
Yeah, excellent. Look, thanks so much for having me, Steve. I've really enjoyed it as well. And I'm looking forward to Emergence next year and really, going deeper with Wholesale Investor. And I, really love what you guys are doing, providing that platform for, for all these great companies and funds. And so, yeah, thanks so much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Yash.